Hello. All right. Had a bit of problems getting this to work already. um, cool. Oh, Jenny's already here. Yay. Ilaria, good to see you. Umaima. Cool. So today I'm doing a little Instagram live with my dear friend and teacher, Jenny Smith. Hi. Because we're actually doing a little workshop together. We've done this before. We're doing a workshop where we're sharing some of our favorite practices to deal with transition and change. And we're in the middle of autumn, which is the season of change and transition, the time to let go of things that aren't serving you anymore. So yeah, I'm just gonna invite Jenny in and then she can introduce herself. So you know what she does. I've never done this before, by the way. I'm a little bit nervous. Come, Jenny, come. Hey!
How are you?
Hello. I'm I'm good. I've got chocolate. I've got a cat. Right.
Oh, cute.
Right good. How are you?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well. Yeah, can you hear me too?
Yes, I can. Okay.
Beautiful. Cool. Do you just want to introduce yourself so people know who you are and what you do and how we know each other, maybe?
Sure. So, my name's Jenny, and I am a Kundalini Yoga teacher in Edinburgh. And yeah, I guess at the moment I was teaching um, in person.
Up
and
until today.
apart until today, yeah. So, I mean, this talk about change and transition comes at such a
Perfect timing.
perfect time. And our workshop will be at the perfect time as well during this Scottish lockdown. And I know that everyone's different wherever they are, but
Yeah.
we're all dealing with, having to get used to things changing. So yeah, I teach online, and Lorena and I know each other because you started coming to my classes a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it was like 1.5 years ago. I was thinking about that earlier, actually. It
Yeah.
was like 1.5 years ago. And yeah, I was hooked.
Yeah.
Kundalini got me. And now we're like this as well.
Yes.
This.
And yeah, and then I've come to some of your breathwork classes since, and I've seen, your transition from what you were doing to what you were, offering now. You're
Yeah,
actually offering these amazing practices, and those, like, I do breathwork as in my own practice. I've
hmm
learned breathwork in my Kundalini practice, and but what you what you were leading me through in those breathwork sessions was mind blowing. Mind like if anyone has not tried Lorena's breath sessions, you have to get yourself there. And of course, you can join us. We're combining our two practices, Kundalini and transformational breath work,
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks, which we'll tell you about later. But yeah, these breath sessions are really powerful for me. Really
Oh,
powerful.
thank you so much. I'm so glad you got so much out of it. Yeah, it's called transformational for a reason. And I feel like the name doesn't even describe it well enough. Like I find it difficult to put into words how intense it really is. But yeah, cool. So
So I just realized I've got a daddy cup.
daddy.
That's not.
Um, cool, sexy. Uh, shouldn't think of that when I think of daddy, should I? Um, right. So I guess like it's not only the transition we're in now. I feel like this year has been a year of transition and change for everybody. Like no matter which stage we're at or like what we've been through, we've all dealt with uncertainty. We've all been fearful. We all kind of had to go through this. And yeah, people had to really sit with themselves and slow down and reevaluate who they are and what they want. So yeah, when's a better time than now
Yeah.
to address this? So I guess maybe we can just start with what our relationship to change is, or with change is, what our experiences with change are. Do you want to tell a bit about yourself? How do you feel about change? How are you dealing with change?
Um, at the moment, it's tough, on here talking about how people should deal with change when, we're in the thick of it. We're,
Yeah.
we're dealing with it as it as it's happening, because it feels almost like we're no longer in control of our own path.
Yeah.
That's just, an illusion anyway, that we have all this control.
Mm-hmm.
But it really feels now that the rug just keeps getting pulled out from underneath our feet. And particularly, I know a lot of people in the yoga community, or in, hospitality industry, the leisure industry, we keep, we're getting told that we can work, and then we're getting that pulled away from us. A lot of us are in that situation. And it's hard to keep positive and to keep steady in what we're doing and just adapt. But that's what we've got these practices for. That's, we're being forced to practice what we preach, essentially. And that's where these daily practices come in. And I guess I've only learned that in my 30s, how to deal with change as I discovered these practices for myself. And
Yeah.
we spoke about this during the week, and we both have similar backgrounds, I think, in that during my 20s, I sought out change. If it
Mm-hmm.
got to the year mark, I'd be off, where can I go next? I lived abroad for 8 years, and I moved like every year and a half. I'd be wanting to go somewhere different. Oh, it's all getting a bit boring. Let's go, let's move. And it wasn't until I reached my 30s that I kind of laid down some roots. And got news for you: life will change anyway. You don't
Yeah.
have to seek out change. Life changes, and there's the famous saying, "This too shall pass." That is not
Nothing.
just for the bad, but it's also for the good. And that's why keeping, I think one of the main things that I try and do to adapt to change is to try and stay in my neutral meditative mind. That's what meditation's for. It develops that neutrality so that we're not constantly jumping from these states of polarity, this
Mm-hmm.
positive mind to the negative mind. And of course we can enjoy the positive. We can, feel everything that what we perceive to be negative. We can still do that, but when we strengthen the ability to come from a neutral space using our meditation techniques, then it's not such a high, it's not such a jump from one to the other. It's not such a polarity.
Yeah.
It's much easier for us to come into the neutral space and then settle there, and okay, come into oh, this is amazing, or okay, I'm really not feeling great at the moment, but know that we've got this space in the middle that we can be, and it's not such a high jump or high fall.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Mm.
It's almost like you're turning into this observer where you're not getting so caught up in what's happening right now, because it doesn't last, it's not permanent, because nothing ever is. And I really resonate with your story as well. We spoke about this the other week, where I would seek out change in the past. Like, I would move from country to country. You would get bored after 6 months and look for change. And I would often get people tell me, oh my God, you're so courageous. You're so brave to do this, to like change everything all the time. But and I thought, oh yeah, they are right. That's very brave of me at the time. But I actually realized later on that that was also a method of false control, because in that sense, I was controlling the change. I was choosing uncertainty, and that gave me stability and security. Whereas things that happened this year, for example, you can't control that. Like, you're not meant to control these circumstances. So the things happen, and you really need to surrender to it, and you really, really need to trust that everything's going to be okay. Um, and yeah, like the practices I do have really helped me through this as well, especially this year. I feel like this year has been so transformative for me, and um, I agree with you in terms of meditation. It's so powerful because it really gets you into that place of stillness where you're just awareness, and you're not getting so caught up in your ego and like your human mind and all the things that can go right or can go wrong. Because as you said, like what you were talking about with kind of that neutral space, everything is inherently neutral. Like nothing really means anything until we assign it meaning. So yeah. Um, so you've had your biggest changes from your 20s to your 30s, you said, or is that when you were
Um,
deal with it?
I feel like I had a very transitional period um, in my life.
Mm.
I can almost, yeah, I had a pretty serious car accident where I almost died. And then the aftermath of that kind of led me to make the changes that I have in my life now. It led me to a spiritual practice, as it were, and gave me these tools that I use now in my life without having to, rely on the things that I was relying on after the accident. I had pretty bad post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a lot of pain in my body. I had chronic migraine and things like that. There's a point where you have to you feel like you're no longer in control. Well, I felt like I was no longer in control of my life at all. Not even, these things that I was experiencing were controlling if I could get out of my bed that day.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to seek out something. I had to seek out something that wasn't, lying in bed hoping that I wasn't going to get debilitated with these panic attacks, these migraines. Um, and that's what led me to Kundalini Yoga. And I'm not saying that that's everybody's, um, you know, everybody's medicine.
Mm.
Everybody finds their own thing that helps them to adapt in their lives and to make the changes that they want to see. And for you, that's something different to what it is for me. But it's tools. What I like to think of as tools to give you back a little bit of a little bit of control, because we can't control everything, but we can
Control our.
empower ourselves,
Mhm.
empower ourselves to um, to become our own teachers, to become our own guides, and not be so reliant on what happens externally. Things will
Yes.
happen, shit will happen. But if we are able to develop, whatever that is for you, it could be dancing, it could be
Mhm.
writing, it could be whatever your tools are that help you. That's what can help, I guess, ground us during these times of change, of transition, because we're in a very transitional period.
Yeah.
It's called many different things, but in my teachings, it's called the transition from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, and that's where we're at now. We've made that transition between eras. The Mayans had a different name for it, but you know, we've moved from a different vibration, we've moved into a different era. And during these transitions, there's always going to be mess. And that's what we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
We're experiencing that craziness, that turmoil that comes when we're moving from the old structures towards the new structures. And that's a big part of my practice. That's a big part of my understanding of it. That these times are difficult, but they are necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting as well, like listening to your story. It's almost that we're only, and it was the same for me, we're only really learning how to properly cope with change and like finding our tools and our practices and whatever that is for us when we have no other choice anymore, when we really have to surrender. um, that's when we really go for it, because our human minds before, we try to control it anyway. um, and I feel like I like what you said about like the practices and the tools are different for everybody, because I think it's a bit of trial and error as well, and it's not really about the practice, it's about whatever state that puts you in. And the practice doesn't matter, it matters like what state you're in. And there are some tools and practices that can really help you shift into a neutral state, or into a state where you kind of can shift your perspective. And when I really think about which coping mechanisms or tools or practices have helped me, it's not so much tools. Obviously, I have my practices, but it's not so much tools. It's more like a shift in perspective. So when I'm fearful of something, when uncertainty hits me, and I get this fear, and I maybe get limiting beliefs that pop up, like this will go wrong, this will not work out, this will be awful. Um, I just try and stop myself and ask myself, do I really believe this, first of all? And then also, can I take another perspective? Can I choose another perspective here? And even if I don't believe that other perspective, at least I know it's there. And at least I know there's not just one outcome to a situation, and there's not just one interpretation of a situation. So and that really helps me in kind of seeing every change, as destructive as it may seem in the moment, which like this year, it felt really hopeless at times, for me personally, and I'm sure for many others. Um, I'm always trying to see it as redirection more than something disruptive. Kind of like you say, that there needs to be chaos, or like there needs to be almost like a purge of the negative, in order for us to come out stronger, to come out at the light, basically.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll see it.
I mean, I choose to trust that we will. Um, so yeah, so for you, the practices you use are Kundalini Yoga, meditation, a bit of breath work. Is that right?
Yeah, my practice, yeah, is, well, Kundalini Yoga those things. The mantra as well. The mantra meditation is really good for you know, removing that noise of the ego. I find that really helpful. Um, and the breath work, and something that I'm getting into at the moment, and I'm finding really, really beneficial, really healing, is dance. And you know, not any particular kind of dance, just allowing my body to move, to
Yeah.
transmute that emotion, that, you know, pent up, you know, when I do get anxious about, okay, I can't control, because, you know, I'm sitting here going, yes, I'm really, you know, I use these practices, you should use them too. That's not the case. I'm an anxious person.
Yeah.
I'm anxious about change. And, you know, I wouldn't have all of these tools if I wasn't that kind of person. I would love to be someone who just sat back and was like, oh, life's changing. Fantastic. Like I was in my 20s, but I'm not. I guess the older I get, the more anxious I feel like I'm getting. So, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've added a new tool to my toolkit, and for me, it's dancing, it's moving, it's some days it's just it depends how my body feels. You know, some days I just want to sway a little bit to some nice music, and then other days I want to shake it out. I want to shake out that frustration, that stagnation that I, you know, perhaps can't do the things that I want to do. And, you know, I'm stuck in my, for example, for the last 2 weeks, I've been stuck in my home with my 3-year-old. She had to be in isolation because she was in touch with someone with COVID. And it's frustrating, you know, it's like I need something to help me transmute this stagnation or this frustration that I'm feeling. So dance is my new thing, Lorena. That is where I'm going. I'm loving it.
Love that.
My neighbors are loving it. But I am really enjoying just blasting up some music, depending on my mood, picking the tune for my mood and just going for it.
That's awesome. I love that. I do that too, actually. I do that too.
I know you do. I know you're a mover.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't call me a dancer because I'm not. But yeah, like movement is a big one for me as well. And I think the reason, and it's the same reason why I do breath work as well, is because it releases emotions and it helps me kind of, yeah, it helps me transmute those emotions and like let them out and release them. Because if we don't deal with our emotions, so our anxiety that comes up, or our frustration or our anger, then if we don't deal with it, like it won't go anywhere. It will just stay in our body, and it will just come out at a later point. And it can manifest in either like impulsive reactions, or maybe even illnesses, diseases, like physically in our bodies. So I think it's incredibly important when we go through change and when we have all these uncomfortable emotions come up, that we do something with them. And dancing, moving is a really good tool for that. I should probably do it more, actually. You inspire.
And what you were saying as well, like it's not about not feeling these emotions. It's not about staffing them down inside of ourselves. Staffing, I think that's a Scottish word, sorry. Pushing them down inside of ourselves, and you know, just leaving them there. As you say, it's about allowing ourselves, you know, you feel anxious, dance that anxiety off, shake that anxiety. And you don't even have to dance. That's the thing. There's some people probably watching here going, I am not dancing. Shake, like that's the dance phobes
Just release of energy. Even you can even punch a pillow or something. Like it's just a release of energy.
Yeah,
that's all it is. And who are we getting? Oh, do you dance? Yeah, we're just talking about this. Yeah, and it's kind of like the same purpose is kind of for like why I do the breath work, because sometimes the reason I really like the transformational breath, so for those people, by the way, who do not know, it's a very deep, quite gentle actually breathing technique. It's a continuous breath. And you do it for an extended period of time. So my sessions are usually about an hour long. So you get really, really deep into it, and it can bring all kinds of sensations up. It can bring up physical sensations like tingling or numbness or subtle vibrations or cramping, but it can also bring up a lot of emotions, and sometimes people get surprised by that. Physical activity and crying.
Cry. 100%. Let that shit go. Let the tears flow. It's yeah.
But when you do transformational breath work, all these stored emotions suddenly come up and people get surprised. They're like, oh my God, why am I crying? Why am I laughing? Why am I yawning? Why do I get angry? Why do I feel like I want to move and I want to punch something? And it's because these emotions that we have stored deep inside that we've never really dealt with, they suddenly come out. So you can even like have some trauma arise in the moment. So it's like, it's not fun. It's not always fun, but it's very, very healing. And so dancing is more something that I do when I know I have emotions that I need to get out, whereas breath work is more something that I just do as a regular practice. I do it daily, like short breathing sequences, and I do journeys like once a week. And then I really let everything out that I didn't even know I had within me. So yeah, those are my two big ones for releasing what's here. And then yeah, there's always meditation and like coming back to stillness and really getting to that neutral space that you were speaking of, where we stop assigning meaning to everything and we're just existing. We're just like in our awareness, in our consciousness, and not so caught up in everything that's going on around us.
It's going to be amazing. And the bad thing about it is I get to do it too, as I'm sitting next to you in our workshop. So great. So I guess we should maybe say a little bit about what our workshop is going to entail and how we're going to bring both of our practices together,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can help people, or perhaps help people on the night, but also perhaps I know that I'm maybe going to give a few tools that people can take away and help to get into that neutral space. But
Yeah.
also from a Kundalini Yoga perspective as well, Kundalini Yoga really helps strengthen the nervous system. And so when your nervous system is strong, you're balancing out on the autonomic nervous system. You've got the parasympathetic, the the brakes essentially, and
Mm-hmm.
then the sympathetic nervous system, your accelerator. And we want to be able to go gently and swiftly from one to the other. You want to be able to shift gears as you would in a car. And so when we're working on strengthening the nervous system, which Kundalini Yoga does, you're working on being able to go from that restful space into that space of action. And that is how we're able also to deal with change, because let's say life is a road. It's not always going to be smooth. There's going to be twists and turns, and there's going to be bumps and stuff in the road. And so when you've got your gears working smoothly, you're much more effective at dealing with the change in the road, essentially. So that's, from a
Well,
system perspective, from, not even being in your mind, but from physically preparing the system to be able to deal with change.
mm-hmm.
Kundalini Yoga is amazing. And there are little practices that you can do every day. And I'll do some of these with you in the workshop that help you to get into that space. Because sometimes what it is as well is, like, say, for example, you're holding your body in an uncomfortable position. Let's just say like this, simple, arms out to the sides. You're strengthening your nervous system. You do that for 3 minutes a day, you're going to get stronger. What it also does is it strengthens that connection, that mind-body connection, where your body tells your brain, or your brain is telling your body, this is not comfortable, drop your arms. And that translates into your life. This situation is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Let's remove ourselves from it. And that's not always possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do have to sit there
With it.
with the discomfort, with the uncertainty, and just allow ourselves to be. And that's also where a strong nervous system will help you navigate these times.
Yeah. And that takes practice, and Kundalini yoga is such a good tool to practice that actively and deliberately and consciously, because like I don't know, like it's not a practice that I use as regularly as you do, obviously, but I found it so helpful because I used to always do everything just with my mind. And the great thing about Kundalini Yoga is that it combines the physical aspect with the mental aspect, with the emotional and the spiritual. So it's kind of like the whole package.
Yoga. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yoga essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a really, really powerful, powerful practice. And like very often you're like buzzing after, depending on the 3 hour, like the sequence of exercises that you do. And I find that Kundalini Yoga and transformational breathwork really, really complement each other in that way. Because I think what we're going to do, not I think, what we're going to do during that workshop, we're going to start with the Kundalini Yoga. And that will kind of really get you going, strengthen your nervous system, as Jenny said, and really prepare you physically for the breath work, which is then kind of adding on the emotional release. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you completely through the breath work. And you don't have to have done it before at all. I will guide you through it from start to finish. And it's kind of like a bit like a guided meditation, but with very, very kind of intense breathing added to it. And it will be around transition and change. So you will be like, you will probably feel high. Jenny, did you feel high last time?
We could have gone out to a nightclub after the last one
If
and had
they
a
have
great
been
night
open.
out, completely sober.
High on
Just
oxygen. High on oxygen.
High on our own supply. Yeah, like that's the thing. It's you're getting high off of your own
Life force.
system, your own technologies essentially. It's tapping into what you already have. That's the beauty of it.
It's kind of connecting to consciousness, to like, yeah, it's like you're letting go of your ego because you're so in the space that you're just like, sometimes you can really have out of body experiences and like become pure consciousness basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a few of my students come to your breathing, your transformational breathwork classes and say they've had that out of body pure consciousness, just like almost like an awakening. We call it a Kundalini awakening, just where the energy just shoots up and you're just all of a sudden so aware that you exist.
Yeah.
And not really much else.
Yeah.
Because think about it, how often are we just in the body by ourselves with no, monkey mind, with no, oh, what's going on over there? Oh, what do I have to do later? In that present moment, in stillness, in sunya, the word for it, sunya. It's beautiful.
That is a beautiful word. Yeah, and then after the breathing, we're gonna finish it off with a meditation. So that's kind of to integrate the experience and kind of calm you down again, because you will be buzzing after, you will be feeling high.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, it's about tapping into the nervous system, isn't it? It's about switching gears. You do feel that buzz, but you'll be grounded as well. You will not disappear.
Yeah, because you need both.
We're gonna, we're gonna finish with a meditation, a grounding meditation that will bring us into that neutral space, bring us back down into the body.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. Do we have anything else to say, or shall we move on to a few questions, maybe?
Yeah. Go with the questions, Lorena. Go with the questions.
So we've got a few questions, but if anyone has questions who's currently on this live, feel free to just like pop them down here and we'll address those too. I think we have like 20 minutes left before it would finish, but we can obviously finish earlier if we answer the questions earlier. So the first one is, I'm just looking at my laptop where I've written them down. How can I support others in dealing with their own transitions?
think this one's yours, Lorena. This is what you do for a living. This is your coaching. Yeah. How do you support others
How
in
do
your
I support others?
with dealing with change?
Yeah, so you already mentioned at the start that like you can share tools and practices all you want, but everybody's different and everybody has their own journey. So like I usually try and get past other people's beliefs and try and shift their perception a little bit. Kind of what I do for myself. Like I teach what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just in general, like even if you're being there for friends, it's just like being there for them and providing support and most of all validation, because I think it can be very easy to suppress, to either spiral down in like the negative thoughts and the negative feelings and to kind of get caught up in that, or to do the opposite and to suppress it. And if you suppress it, that's not that's not working either. So I think like talking it through can really help as well. That's something that we didn't mention. So listening is basically my advice, and being there and holding space as best as you can. um we have a question, don't we? How do you move from fear to surrender in times of high uncertainty and painful transitions? That is such a beautiful question. Do you want to start addressing that, or do you want me to start, Jenny?
You go for it. You start.
Okay. So it's definitely super, super challenging because your ego wants to fight it. Your ego is the place where the fear comes from. Your ego thrives of separation and fear. So it's difficult to like move to surrender. I always tell myself everything is always working out in my favor. That's like sort of my mantra. Because it moves me into a space of trust where I'm like, whatever's happening outside right here, right now, doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it's going to be fine. And I would suggest if you're in a place of fear due to uncertainty, to really embrace it, to really like hug it almost and like not fight it, because if you try and fight it, if you try to get rid of it, you will just create more resistance around it and it will just get bigger and bigger and worse. So I would say embrace it and sit with it and be okay with the fear being there, because that's the only way it can dissolve. And you're it's basically like it doesn't really matter what's going on externally anyway, because it like it's your internal state that matters. So if you're embracing the fear, you're basically moving into a state of acceptance and you're letting go of the resistance, and that's how you can then shift more easily to a place of surrender and trust, in my experience. Does that answer your question a little bit, Umaima? Maybe Jenny has something to add.
Um, I I mean, from a practical perspective, I feel like I'm going the practical route.
That's
Journal
also
journal is something,
mm-hmm.
another one of my tools that when I am in that fearful state, just sometimes I'm writing, you know, what I'm feeling can really help. And another great tool is sharing with your community, whatever your community is, the people that get you, the people that have perhaps, experienced or, that know your situation, your painful situation, allowing them to hold that space for you and to support you. Because sometimes we feel like, okay, I can do this by myself, this is,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be strong, I have to do this by myself. You know, someone that you trust, someone that knows what you're going through, or not necessarily, but just somebody who can hold that space for you,
Yeah,
is a great place to start. And if you don't have that, then perhaps journaling is really great as well, because sometimes when we start, and it's like with talking, you know,
Mm-hmm.
if the space to be able to speak freely, we can almost just, okay, work it out for ourselves just by saying it rather than it being in our minds.
Yeah.
And
If
then
you
we're,
don't like writing, but you want to get it out, and you
mm,
don't have anyone to talk to, voice recordings. I
yeah,
used to do that a lot. And like you don't have to listen to them again because sometimes I can cringe. But like that way you let it out. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, and like if you're in a really dark place, I also want to say this, if you're in a really, really dark place and really struggling, it's also totally okay to seek professional help. So whether that's something like coaching, but also therapy can be incredibly effective. So find your medicine, basically. Find what works for you and try it out.
I'd agree with that. Like, as much as um, I'm saying here, you know, these are the things that I use. These are the things that I use to keep myself maintained. One of the more challenging transitions that I had in my life was becoming a mum.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggled. I really struggled with that transition. I struggled with how much my life changed, with how much, you know, I was changing as a person. And it's quite a, you know, I was hormonally quite imbalanced, as you are when you give birth, and you know, all of those things combined to make me feel like I wasn't, I was in, I was struggling, and that I needed that extra support. And
Yeah.
I got therapy. I was, you know, diagnosed with postnatal depression, and I got therapy, and it was, you know, CBT, cognitive behavioral
Mm-hmm.
therapy, and it was, you know, that coupled with some of the tools, because sometimes we're not always in a place of strength to be able to administer our own medicine. That's
Yeah.
another thing to seek externally. And if you don't have someone trusted, then, you know, a therapist, someone who can speak, allow you to unravel what's going on in your head is, yeah, for me was incredible, and allowed me to be able to deal with those darker parts of what I was going through, and yeah, let me know
Yeah.
that it was okay, it was fine, and I just needed that extra support.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right, we don't have to do everything by ourselves. And I think especially in the spiritual community, it can sometimes like people can almost develop like a spiritual ego where they feel like they have to do it all alone. But when we think about it, like if we are all one and everybody is a reflection of us, then we can work together and we can also like reach out to others to hold space to help us, because we're always growing and healing together in that sense.
Yeah.
um cool. So we do, oh, you're welcome, Umaima, by the way. um so we do one more,
Mm. Yeah,
unless,
one more question. Yeah.
yeah, because I think otherwise it might get a bit tight on time because I think Instagram cuts off after an hour. Okay, so what in your life has brought about the biggest change? Ooh, I think you already started.
Yeah, I've already touched on that. Yeah, becoming a mum. Gear switch. My gear's jammed for a bit, but it's fine. I got there eventually. What
Yeah.
about you? Tell me about your.
Oh, it's actually very, very difficult to say for me because I feel like my whole life has been full of change, but um, I feel like the biggest changes have actually just been internal. So I I attribute the biggest change. Actually, I've gone through the biggest changes this year. Um, I feel like I am not the same person I was 3 months ago. I feel like I've grown more in the last 3 months than I've grown in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Not even joking. And I attribute a lot of that to, yeah, to plant medicine actually.
Yeah.
To a medicine called San Pedro, which is a cactus, and I didn't expect it. I felt called to it, but it has really taught me so much, and it's brought about so much internal change. Like, it's brought me to a space of surrender, of trust. It taught me, or it's still teaching me actually, patience and acceptance. So I've gone through these really, really big life lessons after that experience, and I feel like my ego has taken more of a backseat. So it's not gone. I don't want to say like, oh, I'm getting rid of my ego, because I'm not. My ego is my friend, but I feel like I'm better able to integrate it now, and I feel like I'm actually just coming out of sort of like a dark night of the soul. Uh, like, it's been incredibly challenging the last few months, and lots has happened externally in terms of circumstances that was incredibly hard to deal with, lots of attachment and loss. Um, but it's really brought me to this place of surrender and acceptance. And yeah, and it's almost like I don't want to use the word spiritual awakening because it sounds so new age bullshitty, but but it's like I feel like more connected to my true self after going through this. Let's use that phrase.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But like objectively, I suppose, like if people were looking at me externally, like following my life, they wouldn't pick that event or circumstance or that change. They would probably pick something that's more, that looks like a big change externally, but it didn't cause such a big shift within me. So yeah.
Wow, the past 3 months.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, it's wild. And I'm not sure it's over yet. So who knows?
More to uncover.
Always grow, always more to peel off, more layers to get rid of. Um, yeah, I've had like massive inner child healings and stuff over the last 3 months, epiphanies that I never thought I'd get. It's been amazing in the most difficult and most beautiful way.
I think that's you know a lot of people at the moment are experiencing that, and there is you're someone who's sat with it as well. You've not numbed out, and I'm not judging anyone for numbing out. Numbing out is sometimes a great coping technique. Day of Netflix, fantastic. Because sometimes it's hard to feel everything and to
Yeah.
be so aware. Awareness is not always the easy path. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. It
Yeah.
can be hard work, and so people do choose those numbing out tools. That's okay. That's okay too if that's where you are. It's okay to want to numb out, but you're not somebody who's numbing out. You're tuning in, and that's why you're experiencing these big shifts. Because what's happening at the moment as well is there is globally a lot of collectively there's a lot of healing going on. Healing
Yeah.
isn't always pretty. Healing
No.
isn't always beautiful, lying back, having a nice time. Healing is messy. You're taking out the rubbish. You're taking out
Yeah.
the garbage. You're clearing out, like you say, you're peeling off the layers, and sometimes it's messy underneath there. And that's what you're going through. And you're saying it's wild, it's tough, it's a wild ride. But what we want to be left with is, like you say, that essence, that true essence of ourselves, getting closer to that. Without all of the stories we've been told or that we've told ourselves, without all of the conditioning that we've gone through, and everyone else's opinions and expectations put upon us, and that becomes our story, that becomes our
Yeah.
ego, our identity. When we're peeling that back, when we're releasing that and saying, no, I choose to tune into a different channel, I choose to tune into myself, it's not always an easy switch. There are things that you need to get through to get there.
To get past. Yeah, absolutely. And the only way out is through. It's the only thing we can do. Beautiful. Okay, I guess we're running out of time, so let's end it here. Our workshop, if you want to join, is on the 20th of October. It's a Tuesday, right? It's a Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday. It's flying, yes.
At 7 p.m. British summer time. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you there. I've got the link to book in my bio, and Jenny does too. I really hope that once I end this live, I can save this without problems. So people can watch a replay if you couldn't make it for this live. But yeah, have a lovely day or evening, depending on where in the world you are, because we've got people from overseas, Jenny.
I know, I keep forgetting. You're a global, you're a global lady.
Global citizen. Okay. Yeah, and you have a lovely evening too, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's been amazing to chat to you, and yeah,
We can do it again.
Bye.
Bye bye.